files. In this lecture, we'll look at a method known as To Csv. So we use this To Csv method or function to write files. So far we have seen how we can use the read CSV method. Let's look at an example. So don't forget to import pandas if you haven't. So let's see the read CSV method. So pd.readcsv, and I have created another file known as example5.csv. So it looks like this. We'll try to read that CSV file. So pd.readcsv, and then we'll pass name of our CSV file, which is example5.csv. And let's see what it looks like. So we have column A, B, C, D, and programming as our column names. And we have 3 rows. Row 0, 1, and 2. What we'll do next is use this To CSV file and then save this in a different CSV. So what I will do is, let's save this in a variable called data5. So if we call our data5 object, we have this data frame, right? Now if I want to save this file in a different CSV file, we can do that by using the To Csv method. So what we'll do is, we have our data5 object, and then we'll call the To Csv method on it, and then we'll pass the new CSV file name that we want it to be saved as. So for instance, we can name it example underscore data5.csv. So now this file will be saved as this CSV file, example underscore data5.csv. So let's run this. Now if I go to my home book, there will be a CSV file with this name, example underscore data5.csv. Let's go and check. There you are, example underscore data5.csv. So the content is exactly the same as our example5.csv file. So they have the same content. Okay, that's how we can use the To Csv method to save our files. Okay, we have seen that the read CSV method accepts other attributes like headers, keep rows or number of rows, and so on, column names, index underscore column, and so on. Similar to the read CSV method, the To Csv method also accepts certain attributes. Okay, I will show you an example of how we can display the contents of our CSV file in our Jupyter notebook. So for that, we'll need to import the system. So let's import system, and this has a method known as the standard output that will help us see the output of our file. Okay, so now if we call our data5 object and then call the To Csv method, and we can pass the system, the method that I mentioned. So the system has a method known as the standard output, std output for standard output. So this will help us see the output in our notebook. Okay, now if we run this, we see the values of our file, our example underscore data5.csv, which we got from our initial data5 object. So this is the content. Okay, notice here each value is separated by a comma, and if we want other separator or delimiter, separator is also known as delimiter, and if we want to use different separators, we can pass the separator attribute. So let me copy that paste it here, and then we can pass the separator attribute and pass any separator that we want. Let's say if we want to use colon, we can do that. Now instead of a comma, we'll have columns as our separator. Okay? If we don't pass any separator for our standard output method, the comma will be the default separator. Otherwise, whatever separator we pass will separate each of the values in our data. So if we pass a semicolon will be the separator. If you pass the greater than symbol, it will be used as a separator. And if we go and look at our example 5.csv file, here you see that there is a no value or NA in the second row. So there's another attribute known as the NA rep attribute, the NA underscore rep attribute, and we can pass that attribute and set it to be equal to any value that we want. Okay, let me show you an example of that. So here we have our data 5.to CSV method, and then we'll pass the standard output method, sys.standard output, and then we'll pass the NA rep attribute and then set it to be equal to null. Okay, if we run this, now we have null as our value, right? So before it was a missing value, no value, right? So after 14 it was no value, but by passing the NA underscore rep attribute and setting it to null, now we are able to display this value null, right? So in the original example 5 data, you see that the value is NA, right? So we can pass this NA underscore rep attribute and set no values, NA values, to any value that we want. Null is not the only value. We can pass anything that you want. Let's say missing data or no data, whatever you want. So any text that you pass here will be displayed. Okay, if we run this, now we have missing data. So you can pass any value that we want. Okay, another thing I want to show you is the index and header attributes, similar to the read CSV method. The to CSV method also takes those attributes, index and header attributes. Let's see an example. So we have data 5.to underscore CSV. So let's call the standard output method so that we can see the result, and then we can pass the index attribute and let's set it to false. We can also pass the header attribute and set it to false. Okay, now if we run this, we have 1, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then the no value. So here we no longer have the header, right? The header is set to false. And if we want, we can set the header to none. And since we set the index to false, we don't have the index. The index is 0, 1, and 2. Okay. Now to make it complete, let's call the to CSV method and then call the std out method, and then we'll set the index to be false, and we'll set the header to be none, and then we'll pass the NA rep attribute and set the value to be, let's say, no value or none or no data, whatever you want. Okay, let's say no data. Okay, if I run it now, we have 1, 11, 12, 13, 14, no data, and then the remaining values for our file. So this is how we can use the To Csv method. By calling the To Csv method in this example on data 5, we are able to save our data in a separate CSV file. And we can display that CSV file by simply calling the read CSV method. Now if we call the read CSV method, we should be able to see this data, right? So let me add a new cell here, and then we can call the pd.read CSV method and then pass our example underscore data5.csv file. And if we run this, we see the new data. Okay, and by importing sys, we were able to use the standard output method and then display the contents of the file in our notebook. And if we don't pass any separator, the default separator will be comma. Otherwise, whatever separator we pass will separate the values for our file. And similar to the read CSV method, the To Csv method accepts attributes like index and header, and we also saw the any_rep attribute. Great.